Hello, this is One Bottle, Three Questions with me, Nelson Parry and Mike Best, Master of Wine. Today we're drinking 2022 Gramina from Vassaltis, and we're drinking it with Yannis Papaeconomou, the winemaker and vineyard manager of Vassaltis. And we'll go straight into the first question. To you, Mike.
Hello, Yannis. It's nice to meet you and nice to be tasting your wine. The question that I'd wanted to ask you about is about the basket vines. So people may well have seen, if they've been to Santorini or seen online, these sort of famous pictures of these basket vines grown in this quite unique way. I believe it's called a Kouloura. We're all working on a Greek pronunciation, but something very interesting to look at. And I'd really like to have you explain to us how these are put together, the skill involved, and the reasons behind it. So if you could, explain a few words on that, that would be brilliant.
Kouloura, except being a bit romantic, is actually very, very active. Kouloura is a brilliant way of transforming a vineyard here on the island, so the vineyard can survive. So, what we know about the first viticulturists, like 3,000 years ago, that decided to go that way for transforming a vine, we understood that the huge enemies of the place were the strong sunlight and the strong wind. So they decided to keep the plant a bit low to the ground, and at the same time create a situation that the grapes can be protected against the wind and the sunburns. So Kouloura can definitely do that. It's brilliant, since Kouloura is the reason that we still have viticulture in Santorini. The thing is that there are many disadvantages at the moment in 2025 that we have to make business-wise something a bit more appealing, yes, and less difficult. So today we still have vineyards that they are still beautiful, and we get beautiful grapes from there, from the Kouloura trained system. But the thing is that we have a huge problem between clusters. We have clusters that they are like 14 of Beaumet, and some others are like 11 at the same plant, which is a huge problem for fine wine making, because back then they were sun drying the grapes to make Vinsanto, so they didn't care. Today, the market is a bit different. This is a huge problem. The other is that we cannot control any disease under the Kouloura system, because if we would like to spray, for example, it cannot be applied, because you have access only on the top tier of the foliage. Just the first layer of the leaves can be exposed to any spraying. So in case you would like to protect the grapes, you cannot reach that layer. You need a worker to lift up the plant and some other workers to do the spraying. It's not so smart to do it, and very expensive. So another reason that Kouloura is not efficient anymore is that a plant transformed to Kouloura system needs too much surface. The price of the land in Santorini at the moment is one of the most expensive on the planet, I believe. So agricultural land here on the island is very, very, very expensive. So we need other ways to continue making good wines, making it a bit more efficient and less expensive. Kouloura is beautiful the last like 3,000 years at least, but at the moment we have to, because the situation of the vineyard is under an emergency. We are losing hectares every year and farmers, So we must find a new way of growing grapes here on this island.
So how are the vineyards being managed? What other trellising systems and pruning systems are people using?
At the moment, as you already said, Kouloura is the main way of pruning and transforming the vines. The vineyards that we started planting since 2020, because we saw that the vegetal capital of the island started being reduced every year. So we started planting a lot. We planted more than 17 hectares the last 4 years, which is a huge number for Santorini. We decided to go in Santorini. It's a bit radical, but according to my point of view, it's a bit traditional. We followed the rest of the planet. Trellised vines that they are a bit more high from the surface. The canopy management is a bit easier. Tractors can go in. We try to make pruning a bit less technical, because we don't need pruners that they spend half of their lives to understand how the Kouloura system is made.
And what is the system? Is it VSP, or are you doing something with bush
It's a VSP. We have actually it's cane pruning, canes. So we have at least one cane per productive plant, at least. But we get we use the huge advantage of Assyrtiko to do that. Assyrtiko has one huge advantage. The canes, and of course the shoots before they become canes, they are very, very flexible. The shoots, while they are, green, they don't break easily against strong winds, which means, I remember when I was in France, Mourvèdre, against wind, the canes were breaking like very easily. Assyrtiko has canes that you can even make a knot with it. So they started making baskets. So we take that advantage, which is huge. That's great. That's why Assyrtiko survived under these circumstances. And we put the pruning canes on wires, and then we create an umbrella with the shoots to protect the grapes underneath. We also plant in a way that the late afternoon sun will not create and cause any sunburns to the grapes. So from what we've seen, Assyrtiko can definitely adapt under these formations.
How is the difference in the grapes between VSP and Kouloura? Do you see? Is it too early to tell? That vineyard's only been planted 4 or 5 years, or is it possible to say?
Yeah, from what we've seen so far, the fruit is more homogenized. We see that the maturity of the sugar and the phenolic maturity is more close from plant to plant, even on the same plant, which was a huge problem on the Kouloura. We also have grapes that they didn't touch the ground, so we don't have to sort the fruit on sorting tables. It's way more healthy so far.
That's great. But this wine, the Gramina, this comes from a Kouloura vineyard.
Until 2022 that you are tasting today, yes, it's made from 2 beautiful vineyards. We don't even know the age of these vineyards. Probably 2024 was the last harvests from both of them, because they are too old, they don't produce anymore. So 2023 is a part from those vineyards and a part from some new vineyards that we replanted since 2020.
The first time that you see a Kouloura, like a basket vine, it's kind of incredible, because you don't know where stuff is. So the first thing that I wondered when I saw one, I was like, how do you even prune this thing? So how do you actually prune and do all the, and I'm talking about both winter and summer pruning. So Is there a specific way or specific things that you do just because of the training system?
The first pruners of the island, which was like thousands of years ago, they understood that vines show the phenomenon of acrotony. All the vines have a natural, how can I say it, a natural mission to conquer other plants or grab on trees and stuff. So this means that the vines will always have the natural ability to create very strong canes on their last buds, especially in places that they are so extreme, like here. That's what they do first. The last buds of the canes are so strong that they will continue to get more surface so they can survive. That's what nature asks from the vine to do. So the first pruners understood that the last canes are the strongest. So they started getting every year the last canes to create the new cane pruning on a basket. That's why the trunk started being like many meters long, and the productive canes were every year the last canes of the vine. I told you all that because pretty much the pruner of a Kouloura will always keep the last and strongest canes of the vine, do nothing with summer pruning. They remove nothing because it's a lot of work, of course. You have to dig inside the basket and decide which suckers to remove. And to be honest, what we've seen with removing suckers is that we create more sunburns. Suckers at this point, or shoots that we don't need, create more shade, which is something that we need here.
How long does it take to prune a Kouloura compared to, say, I mean, I only really know about doing, say, double guillot pruning, but once you get in the habit of that or in the rhythm, you can prune them very quickly. How long does it take to do one of these basket vines?
That's a good question. So, from what I noticed from some workers that I had the chance to train them in a way that I would like them to prune, with small cuts, because the traditional pruners here, they put the scissors so deep in the plant that pretty much create a massacre. A good pruner can do like 500 square meters per day, which is on a cane pruning, on a double guillot, you can do 2,000 square meters per day with the same worker. It's four times faster.
Yeah, 4 times. Well, you've got a lower density planting as well. You'll have lower density on those Kouloura too.
Exactly. So if you can prune 4 times faster a higher density vineyard, it means that business-wise it makes sense.
And just one specific question: what would be the might be difficult to say, but what would be the market price for a hectare of vineyard land if you or a hectare of vineyard?
Ooh. I would say that an average per hectare, that's a good price. I don't think you can find it anymore. 100,000 per hectare is quite good for a good vineyard, not a bad one, but not an excellent one.
And how many tons a hectare would you expect? What would you be happy with as a sort of yield return?
So from a traditional pruned vineyard, which is quite old, nowadays you can get like per hectare like 2,000 kilos, and the ratio, because here the vineyards are not irrigated, the ratio between kilos of grapes and hectoliters, it's close to 55%, which is not good either.
No, it's lower even almost than champagne. It's about champagne levels.
Yes. Because you get too much tannins, it starts being phenolic quite early.
Yeah.
The grapes that makes Gramina are all harvested at 5 a.m. Harvesting at night is not an incredibly common thing in Europe. So our question was like, Where did you took the idea from? When did you start? How does it work? So like, how do you find people there? Especially because I guess when you guys are like peaking in the highest time of the season, so I guess that is really hard to find people, and you are on an island, pretty far from from labor, and what equipments do you need? Anything about it, basically.
It's not easy to explain because I have to go a bit deep into the society of Santorini to explain all this. The first part of the question is that why did we decide to get the grapes like so early in the morning or almost at night? I remember the first years that I was receiving grapes here. It was late afternoon, like 3 o'clock, and the grapes were started being harvested early in the morning. They were waiting under the sun for many hours before arriving the winery. And I always believed that this is a bad thing for winemaking because many oxidative enzymes start working. Some sunburns start causing problems, and the temperature of the fruit. If the fruit will reach a high temperature, even if you lower it down, what had to be cooked is cooked already. You cannot re-cooked or uncooked something. So that was one of the big problems that we had to find solutions. The second part is that while I was doing harvests around the world and traveling and visiting places, I remember when I visited a winery in Burgundy. Actually, the winery was owned by a guy called Bruno Clavelier, and he said that whatever I harvest, it's until 10 o'clock in the morning. So I kept that in my mind for many years until I combined my problem with what he said. And I decided for the first time in 2017, some very good vineyards of ours to be picked at this protocol. So I even did it a bit more extreme. I went until 8:30 in the morning. So we started picking at 5 o'clock with head flashlights. And we pick exactly the amount of grapes we need to fill up our press until the 8:30. And then we get the fruit directly to the winery without sorting because the fruit is controlled by us, so it's 100% clean. And we start pressing. So the third part of your question is how we manage to do that. Santorini is very, very touristic, which means that the construction industry here creates huge hotels and huge Airbnb villas and stuff. So many builders live here and they are not allowed to do any construction during August because it's the peak of the touristic season. So they create too much noise and problems. So all these builders don't have anything to do during August. And that's the only good part that construction department has on the island, because we can pump some human resources from the construction department for at least a few days per year so they can help us with picking. So most of our pickers during harvest are builders. Actually, I remember, when was it? In 2022, the one you are tasting, the harvest was postponed until the 14th of September, which was never happened before the last 20 years. So we didn't have any pickers for the last 10 days. So we had to, I don't even remember what we did to pick the grapes. We found a solution. Anyway, Also for the Gramina, because we have to be very, very fast, we are glad to say that all this gastronomic society on the island with fine dining restaurants and stuff have employed many sommeliers that they would love to be a part of creating a wine like Gramina. So these like 2-3 days that we have to be very fast, we ask for their help. They are paid in wine when it's ready. So yes, they help us for like a couple of days. And when the wine is ready, they get their bottle.
So just a question on that. I understand about the value of having cool fruit. You know, you don't have to press the skins as hard. You protect the flavors. You reduce oxidation. These things are important. But couldn't you be less diligent about or less stringent about your picking time and just put them in boxes in a cold room for a day? Or because that's another way of doing it, or is there a difference between picking in very cold in the very early morning compared to leaving it in a big fridge for 24 hours?
That's good. That's a good question. That's what we do mostly with the rest of our fruit, but except Gramina. That exactly what you described is like our 80% of our production line. For the Gramina, I prefer the other one. What I noticed, I see that we get more primary fruit on the final product, on the wine that is aged on the lees and stuff. The primary fruit is something that we lack in Santorini. It's not. We get wines that they are more steely and earthy, very strict, very. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it's so. What we try to do is to create wines with primary fruit, not secondary from the fermentation and stuff. I think Gramina is there, Gramina and like a couple more grapes. Wines vinified on this island. And of course, what I will say is not so romantic as the rest of the explanation. But if we work like I described earlier for the Gramina winemaking, we get more high-end juice directly from the fruit. So if we put it in the fridge, we get like a 55%. But if we press directly from the plant, while sun is not even there, we can reach 63%. And the quality is still there. I mean, it's a very good juice.
I want to ask about your use of ambient and cultured yeast. So if you could explain to us how the fermentation process works in terms of the wild yeasts and the yeast that you add. That's it.
That's a huge debate I always have with fellow winemakers. And it's a topic of discussion, which is important. First of all, I would like to say that we made wines here that they are 100% vinified by natural yeast. Not natural, I'm sorry, because there is no yeast that is not natural. I mean indigenous yeast and commercial yeast. So what I noticed is that after like 2 years, maybe 3, of having a Santorini in a bottle, even if you use like any yeast of you want, of anything, or indigenous yeast, the wine will pretty much be the same. The place is so strong and expressive that the yeast can probably affect the results while the wine is a bit fresh, to give more secondary fruit on the wine, this kind of character. While it's a bit aged, you just use the yeast to create the sugar into alcohol and CO2. That's all. For the Gramina, for example, I create pied de cuve from the vineyard, like a couple of days ago, before pressing the grapes from the vineyard. And I use that to start the fermentation. Unfortunately, this yeast cannot finish the fermentation. So in the end, we have residual sugar. And it's something that I wouldn't like to have in the wine. So in the end, since 2017, when we reached like 5 of Beaumet, we have to inoculate with Saccharomyces cerevisiae, commercial yeast, to finish the fermentation. But the character is made already from the natural yeast. Also, I have to let you know that some 2 PhD students in the past that I already discussed with them, they understood that the indigenous yeast on the fruit is very, very much contaminated by the commercial yeast that the wineries were using 30 or 35 years ago. So the wines that we find in the vineyard is usually the yeast that you can find in the market. So indigenous yeast and commercial yeast, maybe they're very close at the moment. I would like to be more specific in the future if this research would be more accurate. But from what I know, that's how it goes. For us, the target is to create fine wines. If indigenous yeast cannot do that, we will find a way to do it. If picking a cerevisiae from the market to create something better, then so be it. It's not grapes from somewhere else, it's just yeast. We accept the Gramina and the reds that we make, because we make some red wines here at in the winery. We don't use any yeast, except if we have to finish the fermentation.
And is that a feature of, I guess, low pH winemaking, with the Certico from Santorini being around pH 3, that it struggles to get to the end, or is it the low nutrients in the soil? Why is that in particular?
The low pH, yes, it's always a problem. The sugar is usually high, so this creates problems with the yeast. But I believe nutrients are, usually the juice is very poor in nutrients to help the fermentation finish. That's why we need very, very strong strains to work, and sometimes we have to help them as well. So yes, low pH is one factor, but not the only one.
Is this a problem that you have every year? So are there like certain years in which maybe, because I guess that the peaking times are completely different, maybe you peak the 15th of August, but maybe sometimes you peak at the end of August. So is there one year in which, the fermentation goes fully dry, certain years, a huge amount of residual sugar, or is it something that happens every single year?
We have some years that fermentations work without any problems, anything. But the thing is, like years like 2021, for example, we had many problems. Even that we added nutrients and we helped as much as we could. We had some fermentations that finished in March, which is too long for a fermentation. Actually, they stopped and they restarted again in late March, which is something that I would like to avoid. Gives a different character to the wine. It's I don't say it's bad, but we try to be more. For me, the perfect fermentation will last like 3 weeks, maybe 3.5. But that's according to my style. It doesn't mean it's correct or wrong. So we have some years that I do it. I don't add any nutrients, and the fermentations work very well. We have very dry wines in the end. But we have some others that, as you said, it's something that if we would like to find answers, we have to do some very serious measurements that during harvest is not easy to do.
And is there any specific nutrients that you need to add more than the others?
Yes, to be honest, I will answer that. It's something that I started doing in 2016. 4 nutrients. I started using the lees of the previous year. I love working with lees, but not more than what I should to change the character of the wine. So during fermentation of, let's say, 2024, I used as nutrients the lees of 2023. And after that, the lees are too many. Maybe I will take a part to put it in the reds or the sweet wine, the Vinsanto, or maybe some of them will be thrown away. But I always keep a very serious amount of previous lees to use as organic nutrient for the next vintage, which is something that I could say in 2022 was the year that I could adjust my way of adding nutrients to the fermentation to that part of adding nutrients. So I always have some DAP in the winery. Usually I don't use it. It's in case of an emergency that I would like to go faster, or if I can see that the fermentation is pretty much close to stuck. I see that the lees of the previous vintages help the wines being more expressive, keeping the character of our style, and also helping with the batonnage.
How do you store the lees? Are you just leaving them in the tank and you just you put the wine on top, or is there a specific way of storing them?
When we finish the fermentation, we start creating the blends of the year. We decide which tank and percentages will create which label. So when this is done, we have some wines that they will stay with the Santorini, the black label, our generic Santorini label. We have a part of this wine that stayed on the lees for 7 months, and we have a part that is on the lees for 11 months, which is something that we don't communicate with the consumers because it's too much info. It's the same wine, but some lots are more exposed to the lees than some others. So this means that every time I have a tank ready to be bottled, I transfer the lees to the next one, and then to the next one, and then into the next one. So in the end, my last tank has too many lees in there, but it's too close to the next harvest. So after that, I rack the wine, I bottle it, and then I keep it in a tank with a little bit of wine on the top that is slightly over sulfur, and I keep it under the atmosphere of nitrogen because we are very lucky to have a nitrogen generator here, so we can preserve the lees as fresh as possible, which is they are always in very good condition.
So this was One Bottle, Three Questions with myself, Mike Best, and Nelson Parry. Today we were drinking the Gramina Cuvee de Vignerons 2022 from Vassaltis, and we had the pleasure of talking with the head winemaker, vineyard manager, Yannis Papaeconomou. Thank you very much for coming and for all the information about the wine. That was great.
Thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much.